Let me introduce to you first our speakers. Do we have our online speaker from Scania?
Yes, hello, good
Yeah,
afternoon.
okay, hello. First, we have Jakob Thärnå. He's head of sustainable transport at sales and marketing in Scania CV AB. He has been active in different roles in the heavy commercial vehicles industry for 17 years. He holds a double degree in engineering physics and business administration and has worked in many different countries around the world. So, and he will be joining us online today. So this is also sustainable and in line with the climate actions that we are discussing. So welcome to our business forum, Mr. Thärnå.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Our second speaker, Konstantinos Athanasiou, to my right hand, is the local business health, safety, security, environment, and sustainability affairs manager for ABB SA, Greece and Cyprus, where he leads a team responsible for embedding sustainability in every activity of ABB. He has substantial experience in production, in quality control and service activities, and he's an electrical and electronic engineer. Welcome, Mr. Athanasiou. Our third and last speaker, Yannis Golias, is a professor of civil engineering, head of the traffic engineering laboratory, and former rector of Greece's National Technical University of Athens. He is also today's president of the Athens Urban Transportation Organization, OASA, and in the past, he has served in the Greek government as caretaker minister of production, reconstruction, environment and energy, as well as Secretary General of the Ministry of Transport and Communications. He has also served as board member in many different organizations and committees and has an impressive record of scientific publications. Dr. Golias, welcome. Thank you. So, without further ado, let me ask first Jakob Thärnå to explain to us what are the requirements in the shift towards a sustainable transport system, not just in terms of technology, but also from a legislatory, regulatory, and the various value chain actors' point of view. Mr. Thärnå, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the invitation to participate and talk about these important topics. It's a pleasure. It's Scania's purpose to drive the shift towards a sustainable transport system, creating a world of mobility better for business, society, and the environment. Now, we do this because it's the right thing, obviously, but also because we're convinced that we need to be a sustainable company, part of a sustainable ecosystem. And if we don't make this transition, we will not be able to attract talent in the future. The next generation will not want to buy our product, and investors will not want to invest in our company. So whilst it's the right thing to do, it's also about future-proofing our business. Now, we live in a quickly changing, disruptive world. This was true half a year ago, and perhaps even more so now. Global drivers like urbanization, sustainability, digitalization are still here. And at the same time, a focus on energy security and reduced dependency on energy import, focus on this has never been bigger. By 2030, 2/3 of the world's global population will live in cities, driving the need for sustainable transport even more. The world is becoming more and more aware and knowledgeable about sustainability, and everything is becoming digital. Now, in our industry, we answer towards these global drivers with developments in autonomous, connected systems, connected things, in our case, connected vehicles, and electrified vehicles and vehicles running on renewable fuels. Such is Scania's conviction to this, that sustainability is put at the very core of our business strategy. We have specific approaches, sort of infusing everything we do that cover the people's perspective on sustainability, decarbonization, of course, where our biggest impact happens, and circular business, the great challenge for the 2020s. And we're redefining what sustainable transport actually means to us. Now, again, our biggest environmental impact comes in form of carbon emissions, in the use phase of our vehicles. But we're also sure that for a transport to be called sustainable, it needs to be clean, safe, healthy, and inclusive as well. I think this is a forum on climate, so we will focus on this. And to really focus on the correct activities, Scania have decided to set what are called science-based targets for carbon reduction, ensuring that our ambitions are in line with what climate science tells us is necessary to make Paris goals a reality. And before entering into more specifics, I just wanted to show you what those targets mean for us. We have two parts to the target. One is our own operations in scope 1 and 2, and the second in scope 3 comes from the use phase of our products. These now guide us in decision making and really have become like a new bottom line. And this target is as important to us as our other corporate KPIs and corporate targets. The first part of scope 1 and 2 is more or less under our own control, where scope 3, the use phase, really requires changes in the ecosystem, changes in the way our customers operate, in their behavior, as well as product development, of course, from our end. To try and achieve this target, we can work on electrified vehicles, we can work on renewable fuels, more efficient technology in general, driver training services, ensure that vehicles are specified optimally for the transport task that they are set to perform. And to focus a little bit more on electrification here in this talk, about 1/3 of these 20% we expect to come from electrified vehicles. And the journey towards those 1/3 has already started. So last year, Scania launched our first series production battery electric vehicle. It's suitable as of now for urban operations. There will be some sort of exponential development, both in terms of product development, battery capacity, cost of battery capacity, and also market acceptance, and of course the surrounding ecosystem with charging infrastructure and so on. And by 2030, our ambition and our need is that we will sell about half of our vehicles as battery electric. And again, this is what we see. There's business potential for it. There is future cost of operation benefits for battery electric vehicles, but it's also what the climate needs us to do. As we get towards 2030 and 2040, the only way to really stay within the carbon budget that we see in front of us is to go as electric as possible. So it's happening quickly, and whilst it's happening quicker, I think, than many of us would have thought maybe 5 years ago, it's still not happening soon enough. We have a fairly recent study from the Stockholm Environment Institute, where we looked at these types of ambitions, and even with this exponential growth of electrification, with 50% of sales in 2030 coming from electrified vehicles, more than 90% of the rolling fleet in Europe would still sort of rely on the traditional technology and the combustion engine. And this part of the rolling fleet needs to be addressed as well. So whilst we of course are in favor of all activities and incentives to push electrification, we shouldn't forget that it takes a long time to replace a rolling fleet of vehicles in a developed transport system like the European one is. I think one good example where this broader approach has yielded positive results is Stockholm City. We're thinking about the entire fleet and allowing several technologies to share the burden of achieving a target rather than focus on a single technology has really helped us. So since 2019, all public transport in Stockholm is completely fossil-free. And this is not the same as saying that all public transport in Stockholm is zero emitting or electrified. But it means that all fossil diesel and fossil gas has been completely discontinued, replaced by biodiesel, HVO, biomethane and electrified vehicles running on green electricity, as well as, of course, the train system running on renewable electricity. And this was made possible really by the city pushing for functional demands in reduction of CO2 in the tendering process rather than focusing on a specific technology. I think had the city had a clear focus on only electrification, this process would have been slower and we would have used up more of the carbon budget towards our way to more of a zero carbon economy. So already today there are good possibilities, and there is no one single silver bullet, and many of these possibilities come with very positive side effects. So in this picture we show the renewable alternatives that are commercially available today, and if we take biomethane as an example, not only would it replace fossil fuel in the transport system, the process of biomethane production also produces biofertilizers, further reducing the environmental impact. It's also a way to take care of the waste problem that so many cities globally face today. It reduces the dependency on energy import and creates local jobs. So it's a great example of local circular thinking, where agriculture, waste handling, and sort of transport come into the same value chain. And in Sweden, again, we put close to zero organic waste in landfills. In fact, landfills no longer exist. Globally, that same value is about 95% of organic waste being put on landfills, where it continues to produce and leak methane directly into the atmosphere. Methane, of course, being a greenhouse gas, much more potential than CO2, and also being a source of energy that could be used in transport. With a mix of these technologies, big CO2 reductions are possible basically anywhere in the world, and we could get started here and now. And it sounds simple. To some extent it is, but it's also, of course, important to remember that charging or refueling of these new fuels is more than just a cable or a pipe. And depending on local circumstances, different solutions will be more or less suitable and more or less immediate to implement. And this is where we rely on the full value chain, the full ecosystem, in shifting from one technology to another. It will depend on joint efforts from energy providers, the understanding of the transport buyer, the transporter, us as an OEM provider, and of course, legislative support. So how can local governments create incentives for companies to dare to sort of make this shift? Which incentives exist today for a transport buyer to demand from their transport supplier that the transport should be truly green? Which incentives exist today for the transporter to offer this type of service to the customer, the one with need for transport? How are we implementing the European legislations? How will we implement an ETS for transport, the energy tax directive? How are we treating renewables, for example, in AFIR or in RED II, and so on? I think these are all questions that we need to take seriously, and where us as industry will do whatever we can, but where we have a framework to live within, and where legislation could really push us in the right direction. If we talk about charging, many electricity grids are not ready for heavy vehicles to be implemented in scale today. Projects to implement them could be years in the making, which means that we need to have a longer perspective on things. And we need to have a roadmap where we start here and now and might end in a fully electrified system. But in order not to use up our carbon budget before we're there, we should enable solutions for here and now implementation. And the way to do that is, again, to work in partnerships. Not only Scania in dialogue with our traditional customer, the transport companies, but also to create this understanding between a transport buyer and a transport company, perhaps allowing for longer contracts if the new technology requires a bigger investment. Perhaps allowing for more flexible delivery times if the new transport system comes with other operational challenges. So it requires this working in partnerships across and up and down the ecosystem of transport and logistics. And given the right conditions, there's no reason to think that we will not be successful in achieving a sustainable transport system, developing and improving in line with the demands set out in the Paris Agreement. So with those words, I would like to thank you for your attention in this first part of this session and look forward to the questions at the end of the session. Thank you.
It was very interesting. Very interesting to keep in mind that electrification maybe is not the only solution, but we have to look in a holistic view in all different solutions that will contribute to reducing the CO2 emissions, and forget about the technology as such, make it like and also provide incentives for building the networks to refuel and recharge. Thank you very much. Let's move to Mr. Konstantinos Athanasiou, who will walk us through a number of advanced technological solutions and related case studies. There must be the clicker somewhere here. Oh. Yes, sorry for that. And related case studies for sustainable mobility and transport beyond just cars. So...
Okay. Sorry. So, hello. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very happy that I will present on behalf of ABB our solutions for mitigating climate impact from our experience. ABB is a global leading technology company that pioneers the transformation of society and industry in order to achieve a more productive and sustainable future. Through our products and services in the areas of electrical distribution and plant equipment, process automation, motion, discrete automation and robotics, we push the boundaries of technology to drive performance to new levels. Our target is to succeed by creating superior value through transparency and integrity by embedding sustainability in everything we do. That is the reason we have adopted a very challenging sustainability strategy for the year 2030 with very ambitious targets to enable a low-carbon society, preserve natural resources, and promote social progress. In more detail regarding carbon neutrality, the first thing we thought is that we have to lead by example. So we had to become carbon neutral in our own operations by 2030. And I'm proud to inform you that we have achieved that in Athens and Thessaloniki plant and in most of our facilities worldwide already. But although we are a quite big organization and we can have a quite big impact on carbon neutrality, we should work together and achieve higher impact. So what we did is that we decided to support our suppliers in all our supply chain to reduce their emissions as well, but most importantly, to support our customers through our products and solutions to reduce their annual CO2 emissions by more than 100 megatons by 2030. I came here today to present you real solutions, reliable solutions, solutions that are already tested and can be implemented today. Because as we all said in the beginning, we need to act today. We are living in a time of huge change. Congestion in cities is increasing more and more. CO2 emissions are increasing more and more. So we have to do something today. So since our subject is e-mobility and transportation, what is the first thing that comes to our mind? Electric cars, a big hype. So as ABB, we're a global leader in supplying EV chargers, and we supply various types of EV chargers, fast, reliable, and powerful. Recently, ABB launched the Thärnå 360 EV charger, which is the most powerful and the fastest charger in the world. It can charge up to 4 cars simultaneously and offer about 100 kilometers of autonomy with only 3 minutes of charging. We have all seen EV chargers popping out here and there, and it's very impressive how fast they appear in our lives. But how many of us stop and think, how do we support these EV chargers? There's a whole infrastructure network behind every EV charger to take the energy from the power grid and deliver it to the vehicle. One very simple solution is to charge the car directly from the grid, but there are additional solutions as well. As example, the e-storage flex solution consists of a compact, standardized solution that is delivered in a container, which allows either direct charging from the power grid or storing the energy in this system. This enables us to deliver the energy in the future when the demand might be higher or when the cost of electricity will be higher, so we can keep the cost of charging low. As you can see, it's a very compact, standardized solution. It is usually accompanied with a compact secondary substation and EV chargers. And there you have it, a simple solution, 3 pieces of equipment delivered all together and connected to the grid and deliver EV charging. How do we know this? Where did we gain this experience? If you think, where was every technology about mobility tested historically? In racing. Mostly in Formula 1, ABS, ESP, and most of the technologies that we use in our cars today were tested in racing. So what ABB did, we partnered with FIA in what is now called the ABB Formula E Championship in order to test new technologies and evolve new solutions in an area which is very demanding regarding efficiency, power, speed, reliability, and quality. So it's not just a marketing trick, it's not just a race, it presents innovative electric mobility solutions that will shape the future. But enough about cars. Cars are not very efficient. They just carry 1 to 4 passengers, don't they? We have to think of more efficient ways of transportation, ways that transport more people, more passengers, vehicles, and cargo, such as electric trains, public transportation with e-buses, and of course, ferries. We present innovative railway solutions that contribute to sustainable and smart mobility in railways. Let's not forget that the past of ABB is directly connected with railways. We have played a very important role to the electrification of the Swiss railway network. So we do have the experience to evolve technologies that are energy efficient, reliable, and reduce emissions in the area of railway. We now offer traction converters, energy storage systems, auxiliary converters, battery chargers, and most importantly, motors and drives that I will speak to you about them later at the end of my presentation, which they play a very important role. Other solutions. In Göteborg, you can see e-buses in Sweden. ABB is participating in many e-mobility e-buses projects around the world. This is a project that is finished in Göteborg. 21 high-power electric chargers were installed around the cities of Göteborg, and the buses will be charged en route at every 1 or 2 or 3 stops, depending on the distance between each bus stop. A charging antenna will rise and connect to the charger and will charge the bus within 3 to 6 minutes, which is very fast, very reliable, very efficient, and very safe for the passengers. It is estimated that this solution on this specific area with replacing these buses reduced CO2 emissions by 88%, combining, of course, high passenger capacity with low environmental footprint. And let's not forget about ferries. ABB offers an award-winning power distribution system, as well as other energy and storage control systems for ferries. This is a project, again, in Sweden, the 4C Zero Emission Operation Project, where 2 ferries that connect Sweden with Denmark were transformed from diesel power to battery power. ABB supplied some materials on this project and took and played a very important role in the transformation of these 2 ships. And now these 2 ships are the largest free emission ferries in the world that carry 7.4 million people and almost 2 million vehicles annually without any environmental footprint. And last but not least, because it's not just about transportation, even the transportation sector has a huge supportive network behind it, such as logistics centers, ports, bus stations, railway stations. And we have to think about industry as well, and we have to think about electric motors. And why do we have to think about them? Electric motors are used widely in all these areas. And it is estimated that 45% of the electricity that is powered in the world is used to supply electrical power to these motors. So just imagine the impact if we invested in changing these motors, or if we invested in connecting them with variable speed drives, the impact would be huge in the energy consumption. And because no one brought our calculators today to find the impact, I will tell you that the impact would be of about 10% reduction in electricity consumption worldwide if we changed all electric motors and paired them with variable speed drives. ABB offers a very wide variety of motors, a very efficient high-end technology motors and variable speed drives through its motion division. So as we said earlier, we need to act together, we need to act now, so we would like to invite you to our journey for a more smart, safe and sustainable world, powered by our people. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Athanasiou. Amazing technologies, really. I took a lot of notes about what you said about 3 minutes of charging for 100 kilometers for 4 cars, energy storage, the electric motors, the ships. We live in Greece, so it would be nice to see some ferries here as well. But let's continue with our third guest, Dr. Golias. I understand that you will explain to us how technology can help reduce climate change impact by urban public transportation. And also, Dr. Golias will share with us the OASA case, which is a very familiar case since we live here in Athens, most of us.
Thank you, Ms. Boura, and also, dear Chairman of the Hellenic Swedish Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank you for having me here. I also participated in the 6th forum. That means I didn't do so bad then, so I'm again here today. It's a very interesting topic, and by chance, not by chance, it's actually very topical right now. So it's very interesting to see the different views. Now, being a professor, it's very difficult for me. I'm prone to yield to an academic discussion about all these climate changes and things. But actually, being also the president of the BOD of OASA, finally, I'll have to see things through the lens of an authority that has to actually implement and apply things in everyday life. And so I'll try to bring some important issues which we face every day in trying to mitigate the climate crisis and in trying to lower the emissions from public transport. And I can assure you that what we're facing here in Athens, similar problems are facing in Thessaloniki, in all the big countries in Greece, and I'm sure also in the big Swedish capitals and cities in Sweden. So I'll concentrate briefly in 2 priority areas for action with the help of the advanced technology. I'd like to say right from the beginning, I'll not glorify any of the parameters. The parameters are a lot there. And you have to have a holistic approach to come down to lower emissions or to zero emissions. But, okay, I'll go through them in this 10 minutes presentation. First, we have to increase the efficiency of the transport system by making the most of digital technologies, smart pricing, and further encouraging the shift to public transport. This is one axle. The other axle, of course, is moving towards energy-efficient vehicles. We need to accelerate the transition towards low, and why not, finally, to zero-emission vehicles, especially in public transport. I'll start with a statement that public transport should be accessible. And when I mean accessible, it has to have a network which is extended. I can say directly that in Athens, with about 260 bus itineraries, including more than 18 daily trips scheduled with buses, and with a metro network of about 150 kilometers for the 3 lines, and about 80 kilometers for the tram, OASA claims satisfactory accessibility for public transport. On the other hand, accessibility relates to the effort needed to understand the transport system, be informed about timetables, understand the fare system easily. In this context, advanced technology can help. OASA has developed an application through which potential passengers can be informed for the public transport connections with other transport modes, together with the corresponding timetables. The second issue I'd like to bring forward during this short presentation is that public transport, public service, should have the ability to be demand responsive. This is the only way to optimize the service, which means less kilometers empty, in quotes, which means best use of energy. Intelligent transport systems applications can nowadays be applied for the efficient management of urban mobility and interoperability. Traffic and travel demand processing can provide information assistance and dynamic control of transport to travelers, drivers, fleet operators, and network managers. In this context, in OASA, we have developed an advanced real-time system for the monitoring of all vehicles, which gives also real-time information for vehicles' arrivals, both at terminals and main stops, something we are using, not the passengers. So in this way, we have the possibility, the capability to intervene, change itineraries, and also change the time intervals among the trips scheduled, so that we have, again, best use of the buses and of the energy we are consuming. Now, I cannot leave the issue of demand responsiveness without referring to another issue, which we're also evaluating in OASA after applying it to a specific municipality. I'm talking for providing on a demand responsive basis a public transport service in areas of low passenger demand. That is what is called mobility as a service concept. So we have a line which goes with different itinerary depending on the demand we get directly from our clients. These systems require passengers to request a journey by booking online with a central dispatcher who determines the journey options available and take advantage of fleet telematics technology. Okay, now let's go to another issue, the role of public transport towards greener, that is, cleaner cities. This role, too, can be categorized in 2 main perspectives. The first one has to do with the ever-growing congestion. It is there, either with electric vehicles or with diesel vehicles. Congestion has negative economic, social, health, and environmental impacts. The use of private car for commuting to the city centers should be discouraged through measures that will increase travel time and cost for the cars and will make the use of public transport preferable. Road capacity for private motorized transport should be decreased and should be dedicated to on-ground public transport modes, bicycles, and widened pedestrian zones. Cities and local authorities will play a crucial role in this strategy. They are already there. They are implementing incentives for low-emission vehicles, encouraging cycling and walking, and public transport, and also car-sharing schemes. Of course, the second perspective of the public transport role for cleaner cities has to do with the environmental objective of replacing the public transport fleet with modern vehicles powered by cleaner fuels and better technologies. We have heard a lot, the last 2 speakers have enlightened these issues. Clean and zero-emission buses in urban areas offer reductions in emissions of greenhouse gases, of air pollutants, and of noise, and by moving on quietly and smoothly, make public transport more attractive. And also, soon in 2023 will be an obligation. We heard Mr. Spanos, I think, the third speaker, the previous session, he was saying that we have to have reports on our print for carbon emissions. So it's something we will have to do one way or another. It is true that public transport services only account for a minor fraction of transport-related emissions in urban areas, both in terms of greenhouse gases and air pollutants. It is, however, not the mere emission volume effect that bus decarbonization brings to the table, but rather the direct market influence and funding share of local and regional authorities. It is the realization that the decarbonization of public transport and public sector utility vehicles, I dare say, has the potential to exert a pioneering role for wider spreading vehicle decarbonization. However, it should be stressed here that national states and the EC have to address in a stronger way the issue of high vehicle and infrastructure investment costs and the hidden additional workload and overhead cost incurred by supporting the development of zero-emission buses. Of course, the image is in favor of clean buses when one takes into account the external costs, but yet it's very difficult for transport authorities to bear these increased costs, and it's obvious that structural financial support in this transition and wider financing mechanisms are strongly required. Furthermore, the existing efficient service tender and operation processes based on diesel bus technology need to be adjusted and require significant institutional innovation from the part of transport authorities. With alternative fuels and technologies, tender processes and technologies concern now more stakeholders. For example, electricity grid operators, energy producers, landowners, local approval authorities, a lot of actors. Furthermore, bus systems, am I going very quickly? Furthermore, bus systems implementation projects have more critical milestones to achieve. For example, it's not when you deliver the vehicles, but you have to have at the same time the infrastructure ready, which is not depending on the transport authority. You have to have timely connected to the infrastructure to the appropriate electrical grid, which, for some of the technologies mentioned before, has to be very strong and very updated. All the above require intense coordination. Also, the assets concerned with the zero-emission bus systems are more expensive and have a longer lifespan, which require different contractual procedures, catering for an orderly transfer in case of a change of a contractor operator. These issues are only mentioned here in an effort to spread knowledge and experience and exchange good practices towards tackling the related difficulties. Because it should be stressed that the adoption of clear and finally of zero-emission buses is a one-way street towards a sustainable transport system. It is in this context that the public procurement tender is in the stage of offer evaluation by the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport for 650 buses with the following allocation: 300 CNG buses, clean, and 350 zero-emission electric buses, all of them with depot charging systems. 2/3 of them are planned for Athens, and 1/3 will be allocated to Thessaloniki. This tender terminates with a remarkably sustainable way, a longer than 10-year period during which there was no new bus acquisition. It is expected that the new buses will start arriving in the first quarter of 2023. It is also worth mentioning that a second tender for a similar number of new buses will take place in 2023, the vast majority of which will be zero-emission vehicles with opportunity charging systems, which is a much more demanding system, and a lot more actors will be involved for the final operation of the system. Finally, I should like to stress that zero-emission cars and buses, or even self-driving vehicles, are no panacea for curbing emissions. The use of such vehicles are a sine qua non part of the solution. For example, the fast-growing share of electric vehicles itself, as I already said, do not address the negative externalities from congestion, regardless of their energy efficiency. A holistic approach through policies aimed at reducing demand and at a shift to a sustainable mode are a prerequisite for a radical and quicker urban transport emissions reduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Golias. There was a lot of interesting things I heard about OASA, the applications you're working with. You talked about accessibility, the importance of accessibility, of demand responsiveness, mobility as a service, which I would like to try myself. So, okay, I will do that. I will do that. You will give me more information. But let's now move on to the Q&A session. We have also Mr. Thärnå with us. And actually, I will take it from the partnership point of view, because you all mentioned in a way how important partnerships and collaboration is. You even mentioned about collaboration with the citizen, and you also mentioned about how you engage the customer and so on. So the question I want to make to you is, what is the importance of partnerships in achieving your targets of reducing transport's climate change impact? How do you ensure customer-partner engagement? Let me start by Mr. Thärnå, who is online.
Thank you. I think partnerships are absolutely vital going forward in achieving our targets and in achieving the targets we need to achieve together. It could be technology partnerships of a grander scale. We ourselves have similar projects. So in Östersund, for example, in Sweden, a city in northern Sweden, together with ABB, we're also opportunity charging buses. But it could also be of smaller scale, where smaller startups specialize on something in particular and partner together with established players, as might be the quick digitalization journey now, to testing out new business models with customers or joint planning to ensure we don't end up in sort of a chicken or egg scenario where we together with infrastructure and energy providers do something together. And we do. So we engage in deep collaboration with our direct customers and transport buyers on specific decarbonization roadmaps, but also in coalitions, as might be the Pathways Coalition or the First Movers Coalition, different work groups to speed up change. At Scania, we arrange a sustainable transport forum every 2 years. It's clear we can't do this alone. And to invest in infrastructure and completely new fleets of vehicles, which are, from an investment perspective, capitally heavy, requires new ways of procuring transport, both in public tendering and for private companies, to secure that investment. And as I said before, longer contracts or more flexibility in the way we require things from these tenders. And lastly, on sort of the side of more concrete action. So through Traton, our mother company, we're also part of a joint venture with Volvo Group and Daimler to set up a European network of chargers for heavy vehicles, all in order to sort of speed up this transformation. But the partnership aspect of it is absolutely vital.
Thank you, Mr. Thärnå. What about you, Mr. Athanasiou? What do you believe about partnerships and customer engagement, and how do you ensure that? Yes, I hope so.
Okay,
Yes.
well, as I said earlier in my presentation, it is very important to engage others in order to have a bigger impact. So what we did in ABB is that we introduced the energy efficiency movement. What is it? It is a movement where we invite all our partners to commit to take action against climate change and to become more efficient, and to commit to perform some activities in order to minimize their environmental footprint. But it's not just about our customers and for our suppliers, it's for everyone. Everyone can join the energy efficiency movement, even competitors, NGOs, other companies, universities. Everyone who is interested can join the movement, set targets, and how does it work? It's very simple. We just sit on a round table, we share our knowledge, our experience, our solutions, and we support them to achieve their targets in order to have a greater impact for the common good. They're not obliged to buy anything from us, it's free of charge. Okay, that's very important to say. And we just sit there and share knowledge for the common good. It's very important. You can find details online, and we hope to see you there and sit together and exchange opinions in order to have a greater impact on reducing CO2 emissions by becoming more energy efficient.
Thank you, Mr. Athanasiou. Very interesting initiative. I will try it. And Mr. Golias, what do you think about partnerships and engaging the customers and so on?
Well, I'm afraid there's another way. We have to have this collaboration from the part of those that offer the service, and also from the part of those that give all the technology and the buses, if you like, or the cars to those that offer the service. It's like trying to make a government from different parties. It's perhaps more difficult. I'll give you my experience. We are striving for having good transport and with the timetables we like, etc. Now, if I establish quick chargers in the city, I have to come in terms with about 40 different municipalities that have they have the responsibility. We have to decide and see how these collaborate with their plans for public, the value of environment, and we have to do this before any tender. We have to agree on that before any tender, and this will take some time, and so it's difficult. But I'm sure we'll come to terms to it. For example, for this first tender, we have come to terms with ADE and DDE, which are those that are responsible for the grid. And it took us about a year to come finally to an agreement. So we are ready to receive these 350 buses that will go in the depots, because we don't have chargers on the street. When it comes to the street, it's going to be much more difficult. So it's a lot of work to be done, but there's no other way. We'll have to learn to collaborate, all of us, because it's for the good of the environment, the climate, and finally of the citizens.
Yeah, and it fits very well with what the minister said earlier about that this is a horizontal problem, and it needs a horizontal solution as well. And there is where the state should step in and help you to deal with this, because you cannot deal with all these, different bureaucratic organizations of the public.
But, for example, my colleague here said, okay, we can charge in 5 minutes, but if you have chargers that charge 5 minutes or 6 minutes buses, the grid around this charger produces problems to the electricity of other users around this. So one has to be very careful. One has to do, one has to construct new capabilities of the grid. So it's not so easy. But we have to collaborate. We have to have a common solution. There's no other way.
Thank you. So partnerships is very important, and also customer engagement. Let's do one last question before we go to the coffee break. I have a question here, but before doing that, let's see, do we have any questions from the public? I mean, anybody who has a burning desire to ask something? There are microphones on the side, so if anyone has a question, let's take that. Otherwise, I will take the ones that we have. Anyone? No? Okay. You can make the questions afterwards as well in the break. So the other question I had is, we saw a number of technologies presented both by Scania, by ABB, and also you mentioned a lot, also Mr. Golias, also from OASA and so on, and what you're using. How mature are these technologies for a wide-scale adoption? Are there any related time, cost issues, or other challenges that you see? Let's start with you, Mr. Golias.
Yes, I think Europe, I think for a lot of technologies that have been presented today, there is a maturity. This maturity is growing. Of course, it's different when it comes to Europe, different when it comes to the States, different when it comes to China. But I think Europe is steadily and with an increasing speed getting maturity. I think we have gone by the time that we were buying 20, let's say, electric vehicles to see how these operate. Now we can go to a much higher number. We have experience that we share with other transport authorities. So I think we're in a good let's say, road map, but we have to strengthen, enhance this collaboration with the authorities, from the part of the authorities, and it comes back to this collaboration thing.
Again.
But I think maturity is there. Now we can proceed. The basic diseases, the children diseases have passed, and I think we are there. We can go with the maturity that we have and increase the speed.
Implement. Thank you. That's a very optimistic view. Mr. Athanasiou?
Well, as I said in my presentation earlier, I presented mature solutions that have already been implemented, and that was actually the reason I wanted to present this type of solutions. So yes, I believe they're pretty mature. They have already been implemented and tested. Of course, as Mr. Golias said, we have to work together to overcome the challenges of the infrastructure, which is very important, especially in the urban environment, in the cities. But I think we should not hide behind our fingers anymore. The solutions are here. We have the ability to put them in place and to implement them and start working together in order to mitigate the climate impact we have.
So we just need to push on the accelerator. Yes. And Mr. Thärnå, thank you, Mr. Athanasiou. Mr. Thärnå, what is your view on that, your experience?
Well, I think similarly, what was presented in my slides are technologies that are available here and now. Electrification obviously still maturing, but I think for the urban operations, both in terms of buses and in terms of goods transport, the technology itself is fairly mature. If you look at the renewable fuel sides of things, it's been tested for years and years. But again, the challenges we might see are to make sure that the product goes together with the infrastructure and all the permits required from different stakeholders. In many cases already for electrification, we see positive cost impacts over the long term if we look at it holistically. And I think, in terms of time perspective as to when we can be even more mature for electrification, I think even for long haulage operations at the end of next year and come 2024, the product technology will be there, and it's about making sure and being part of creating an infrastructure that supports it. And just as a last comment, I think there are so many things we can do, and looking at public transport systems as a whole, for example, there are so many things that can be done with existing products as well. If you look at the bus rapid transport systems, dedicated transport lanes and so on, that make it easier for buses to travel, quicker for buses to travel, and make public transport more attractive and more accessible. So yeah, there are many things that are mature and can be done already here now.
Question, basically, we all believe that the maturity is there. Now it's happening, it's really happening. It's just to push on the accelerator, share more, but partner more and collaborate more, and also remove the obstacles that have to do mostly with building the infrastructure that is needed, because it's like we need to build new networks, new roads, or new electrification. It's similar, but it's happening at a time where everything is already set, so you have to do there is a lot of hurdles related to that. So thank you very much. We will now step on to the next coffee break, and we have until 5:20. Thank you so much.